you. And I just want to say thank you again before we begin.
Fully agree. Like I was saying earlier, like writing is the one like resource or skill that spans all majors. As people are coming in, you want to talk about fandoms? What have you been watching?
I mean,
or reading?
Say you're going to be disappointed in me because I've only been rewatching Star Trek Next Generation, and it's going to take a while. I'm finishing Stephen King's Dark Tower series because Stephen King is great pandemic reading. I need to reread Dune, obviously, before the new. Yeah. But I'm behind in a lot of the usual stuff I would be obsessing over. I haven't had as much time because strangely with the pandemic, you both have too much time and not enough time. I'm not sure how that's happening, but yeah.
I completely agree. I told, there's someone in the house today that I told about you, and I was like expert in graphic novels.
Oh, I mean, Sandman, the audiobook came out like a couple weeks ago, which is pretty exciting.
I didn't know that.
And Gaiman is one of the voices, so I've been waiting to listen to it. Yeah, I don't know. I'm going to be doing my Neil Gaiman class again in winter. So if anybody in the room today who's excited to either already knows Neil Gaiman or has heard about him and wants to take that class, they can just email me later. It tends to fill up first pass, but I'm a huge sucker and I PTE in people when I can. So
I love that about you.
When do you want me to officially say hello? Do we have people?
Let's give them like one more minute to like, especially because it's the first one.
Mm-hmm.
Just make sure, because this link is connected to like an authentication.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So I just want to make sure everybody's in.
Do you make your earrings?
No, I wish. They are homemade though. Like a friend of mine actually makes, and I quote, high vibration jewelry. Yes.
I'm curious, what does high vibration mean?
I'm not 100% sure, but I think it's supposed to make you feel in line with your essence. That's how I'm taking it. Hi,
I'll take it like that too.
Joining us. I know, I like that explanation. Hi everyone, welcome so much. We're just giving people a second to log in. We are about to get started. We're talking about fandoms while people are coming in. So if you have a favorite series, book, graphic novel, comic, drop it in the chat. I wore, because I know that our guest today is like an expert in all things geek. I know you won't claim that for yourself, but I'll claim that for you. I wore my Stranger Things shirt just for you because I do feel like being at home is like being in the upside down. So I wore my upside down shirt today. Thought you would enjoy that.
Very much so. Very much so.
Did you see they're doing like a drive-in Stranger Things situation in LA?
So LA is actually doing a lot of drive-in stuff for Halloween because traditional Halloween can't happen. I think there's also a Nightmare Before Christmas drive-through experience, which I would be very excited about. But it's a little hard to know how crowded these things would be or trafficky because, yeah. And as you know, our other listeners probably don't know, I have a 2-year-old. So I'm going to try to do something Halloween with her. Normally we would take her through the dorms and we do reverse trick-or-treating where we visit students and hand out candy. There's going to be very few people living here this year and it wouldn't be safe to do. So we may just, I don't know, dress her up in costumes every day of October because we can.
I am very excited about that. I love that. Well, let's get going. We've got mug cakes to make.
All right, well, let me
introduce yourself. Tell us about yourself.
Look at this high tech, super high tech. So hello, everybody. So I'm Dr. Tara Prescott Johnson. This is my email, T-P-R-E-S-C-O-T. Only one T at the end. UCLA spells my name wrong. I've been trying to change it for years. I've just embraced it. At ucla.edu. I'm sure it can be in the chat or something. So that if anyone has follow-up questions they want to ask later or they think of later, or too embarrassed to ask in public or whatever, or want to get into my gaming class in the winter, you know how to reach me. So that's me. And today we're gonna make some mug cakes and talk about writing at UCLA, and specifically for transfer students. I will say, so both Sarah and I are longtime bakers. This is a very easy one. You don't need an oven, you can just use a microwave. And writing is different from baking in the sense that there's a recipe you can follow for baking. Most of the time it will work. But you can't follow recipes with writing, much as everybody wants to be told exactly the right way to get an A on something. So that's one of the things I kind of want to talk about today is like, okay, there's no one perfect way to do it. What are some strategies to help? So that's me.
I'll do a super quick. I'm going to be baking along. My name's Sarah Molitoris. I'm the Assistant Director of the Transfer Student Center. And I'm just going to be asking Tara some questions about writing at UCLA and academic resources, many of which were submitted by you. So thank you so much for filling out that registration form and sending us great questions, because we pulled many of them. And then we're going to have time for questions from you all at the end, but you're welcome to drop them in the chat at any time. But yeah, let's get going. I brought an apron because I will spill things on myself. It's too tight.
What?
I love it.
This is a completely unnecessary thing, but I have it. And so, see, now it's very professional.
I love it.
I have to make sure you'll see my button though. Yeah.
Oh, she's ready, y'all.
Say, faculty members at UCLA love transfer students. You come in with all kinds of different experience. Many of you have held jobs, have families. I don't know, it's exciting to have transfer students here. So even though I can't talk to you each individually, I want you to say I'm really excited that you are coming to UCLA. All right, so are you ready to start, Sarah?
I'm ready.
So this recipe is coming from a book called Mug Cakes. And it was actually written by the aunt of one of my students. So we're gonna do the orange dreamsicle mug cake today. It's a nice summer kind of food. This has not felt like a summer at all. So we will just pretend that it's been an amazing summer. So I guess the first thing is, do you have a mug, Sarah?
I do, and I saw just a minute ago that you actually need two. Yes. It makes two. So I guess my partner will be really happy when they get an orange dreamsicle mug. I have a really big one I think you'll like. It says milk and Wookiees.
Oh, see, I thought it was going to be the genderbread person.
That would be even better.
Here's mine. It goes with yours.
Yes! We legit did not plan that.
We also
but I'm not
about the Mandalorian is restarting. But anyway, okay.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to start by putting an egg and some oil in here.
Yes, ready. I like how the recipe is even as specific as mix with a fork. So you all, by the way, should have this recipe. It's right next to the Zoom link you used to log on. So if you are making along, let us know how it goes. And if you're not making it now and you make it later, send us a picture on social media. We would love it.
A little bit weird, like it looks like I'm stirring her brains.
Yes, exactly. I have never made a mug cake in a lay ahead before.
I'm actually not entirely sure I can microwave this, so I will probably put her into something else, but at least for now. All right, so we're whisking an egg and an oil. Do you want to ask me one of your questions?
Yes, I'm ready for you. So what do you see as the biggest writing challenge for new students?
So UCLA students are smart. You are all really smart to come into this school. And it means whatever you've been doing so far in terms of your writing has worked for you. What's challenging is when you come up into the upper division courses and you're asked to do longer, more challenging, research-oriented essays or articles. Whatever that format is that got you this far kind of starts to break down. So whether we're talking about, first-year students that are coming right out of high school, or whether we're talking about first-year students that are transferring from a community college, it can be hard if you've found a formula that kind of works. And then all of a sudden you take your first class and it doesn't work anymore. I think that is the thing I hear most from students. They are very, very frustrated. For students that are coming from high school, it's changing from a 5-paragraph essay. For transfer students, sometimes it can be, up until now, you've only needed to use like MLA format. And all of a sudden you've got APA or Chicago or footnotes. Or maybe you've been used to having assignments scaffolded, which means the professor will give you parts of a big assignment, over time that will build. But when you get into the upper div courses, all of a sudden it's like, here's this massive research essay you need to do in 10 weeks or less, go ahead. So I think that's the hardest thing for students that I've heard.
I completely agree. I just zested my orange, by the way. I was being real sneaky.
Yes. All right.
This is like this is one of my like 2 favorite kitchen pieces, is a microplane. Very nerdy, but I bake a lot, so I zest things into it.
It's a mouse.
Oh, it's so cute. I think I've gifted that to someone before.
You gave from Target. So I pre-zested.
You're so smart. So zest is just really tiny pieces of a peel, if you don't know.
Dumped zest onto my laptop.
Just going to be an extra zesty, computer experience now. The thing that someone said on our team this last week, we were talking about writing at UCLA, they were like, you feel like exactly what you said. You don't know until you realize you don't know it. And then you're like, I need help. So can we talk about when you have that realization that maybe you do need some like writing help, or there's something that you're not sure about, where do you turn to at UCLA for that assistance?
Sure. So first of all, it happens to everybody. If you haven't already heard of the term imposter syndrome, everyone has it. Everyone's freaked out and worried that, did they get in by mistake? Do they really belong here? You do. And like, if you need to make a little Post-it note next to your study area that says, I belong here, do that. So yes, everyone has that freak out moment multiple times. Faculty members still have it. And writing is really a challenging thing. So I would just put that out there. In terms of resources, definitely the sooner the better to reach out. So instead of waiting until it feels really, really bad, very early on, you could just check in and be like, this is the thing that I'm kind of working on. Does this seem okay? At UCLA, we have the Undergraduate Writing Center, which is now fully online. And they've got great videos on their website explaining what kind of services they offer, how to use Google Docs with them if you haven't done that before. And so they're a peer resource. So it's another student here who knows what writing here is like, may have even taken the class that you're in. And they give advice and feedback. So they won't fix a paper, but they help you get better at recognizing errors in your own writing and improving over time. So Writing Center, oh yeah, Writing Center. I used to work at a graduate writing center and completely stole that sign. Office hours. Again, they're a little bit different in an online world. I'm gonna dump some Zest while I'm talking.
I just did Zest. I added my juice and I put in my sugar.
Okay.
Looking very, you can't see very well. It looks orange and goopy. It looks like a giant egg right now.
What's funny? I originally bought orange juice and realized you didn't need it to buy orange juice for this recipe. You could just juice the orange that you were zesting.
True. I think Writing Center, I will say when we're back in person, something great about the Transfer Center is that we have the Writing Center as one of our office hours partners. So they come in for a couple hours every week with a peer writing coach. We had the best coach last year who was a transfer student, just like really, really wonderful. And like people definitely come and get writing help all the time. Like his appointments are always booked. But I say that because like it's very, very normal to like check in with the Writing Center and do so like often or early, even if it's just, you know, to have someone read your draft. Does this make sense? That's one of my biggest questions is, does this make sense to someone else? You know, like getting something out of your head and onto paper can be really hard sometimes.
I think some people think that the Writing Center is only for quote unquote bad writers, which is not true at all. It's the strongest writers who go in and know that getting feedback is an important part of the process. I will say if any of you out there actually like writing, it's okay if you don't. Most people tell me they don't. But if you do or you like helping people, you could apply to be a peer learning facilitator at the Writing Center as a possible job option with very flexible hours. So I would just put that out there. All right, so we talked about Writing Center, office hours, talking to professors early in the quarter to find out more tips for how you can improve your writing. So when you approach a professor in a class about your writing, you don't want to say, what do I have to do to get an A, right? Even if that's like what you're actually thinking. Instead, what are steps I can do to make sure I perform my best? Or what are the things I can do to improve on the previous essay that I turned in? Or this is something I'm struggling with. I've only used MLA before. Did I do this citation correctly? Those kinds of approaches, professors are really happy to talk to students to help them succeed, especially early on, right? You don't want to wait until the last week of the quarter when it's too late. Okay. Let's read the next instruction and then give me a question. Let's see.
Yeah.
We're adding salt, yes?
Yes, I will let you measure out because it's 6 tablespoons of flour, and I just measured mine, and I found myself. Did you already pre-measure yours?
Yes.
You're so good. So we're adding flour and salt, and then we're going to be mixing that. I remember you shared with me that there is a writing class specifically for transfers.
Yes, in the English department. I believe it's only for English majors. So it's a course for English majors that are coming in that are kind of concerned about, like, are they prepared for these upper div writing courses and English courses in the major? So they have this option for transfer students in the English department. Yeah.
I love that. So we did get a question. We were talking about it last week on Facebook with this session in mind. I asked a question about like incoming students, what questions do you have about writing? And there was a whole thread about citations.
Yeah.
So I think citations are something that make people really, really, really nervous, especially when it's a kind, like you said, that you haven't maybe used before. So can you talk to us about how to become, as I put in your questions, how to become a citation wizard?
I know, if you had given me that just a couple hours earlier, I could have busted out my Dumbledore costume and wand. Although I have to admit, I am not a citation wizard. Very few of us are. And I think that's a helpful thing to think about in terms of your courses in general, is that you're not being asked to know everything, and you're not being asked to be perfect. You're being asked to know where to go to find the answers when you don't know what they are. So it's okay if you don't have, you know, the MLA Bible memorized. In this case, I'm bringing a writer's reference. It just means that you know when you're writing and you can't remember how to cite something, to go to a site like the Purdue OWL, OWL, or going to a writer's reference, or you can talk to a librarian about programs like Zotero, which will do some of the formatting for you. So you don't have to have all the arcane rules about how to cite a dissertation, how to cite a website, how to cite a journal memorized. But you do need to know where to look to get that information and then use it. Writers always have to keep their audience in mind, right? So in your classes, your audience in most cases is a professor. So listen to what that professor is telling you about what they are looking for. If they want APA, if they want MLA, if they want Chicago, if they want footnotes. Some of them will tell you things like they actually want a sentence in their essay that says, in this essay, I will blank. My classes, I don't ever want to see that. So you kind of figure out, you figure out what your audience is looking for. And then your job as the writer is to provide it. I would say that models are super helpful. So look at the type of readings that the professor is assigning. Look at the citation that they are doing. because there's a pretty good chance that that's the type of citation that you will be expected to do. So as you're doing the reading, kind of keep that in the back of your mind. How is this writer letting me know where they got their material from? If I wanted to double check this source, how would I do it? That's the same sort of way of kind of modeling how you will do it as a student. And to take some pressure off of you, most professors don't really care about it being citation perfect. What they care about is that it's not plagiarized.
Yeah.
As long as they can tell you've taken this idea from here, or you've cited this from here. Most professors aren't gonna get caught up in whether it's capitalized right or it has commas in the right place. The big picture thing is they wanna know where your ideas are coming from, where those words are coming from. So that's the main thing I would worry about first, rather than getting all caught up in arcane rules.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you that people get really nervous about like academic dishonesty, plagiarism, and like that's really important to keep in mind, is to understand like what are those boundaries and how to cite correctly. But yeah, the OWL Purdue one, I had that bookmarked for years on my computer. And I am also a very big Zotero fan. I actually took a class years ago when I was a grad student at UCLA about how to use Zotero. It was offered by the library. I suspect that there's probably a video now online.
Yeah.
I really liked that resource. Basically, it's like you can use it as a browser add-on. So when I would be writing a large paper, I would just, every time I read something connected to it, I would save it to my folder. And then at the end, all the ones I actually ended up using, I would basically check from a list, and it would like help me start the citation process. I have my marshmallows out. I already ate a couple because I love marshmallows. It's one of my favorite foods. Yeah, I'll just leave it at that. I love marshmallows.
I'll often ask my students what resources they use. And a lot of them will use things like EasyBib or, you know, those things. Just be aware that sometimes when you copy and paste, the formatting drops. So even if you use those, it doesn't always mean it comes out right. I've also found problems with Grammarly, just throwing that out there.
Yep. A
lot of these tools that will automatically do it for you are problematic. So it's good to run it by a real person at some point. I will say, so I'm a professional writer, and I still run manuscripts by an editor and ask for double checking on the citation. So again, I don't want you to feel dumb if you're struggling with this. It's everybody does. It's just kind of part and parcel of academic writing. All right, so we put marshmallows in. Now we're dividing between 2 mugs, so we have to choose 2 mugs.
I'm kind of nervous about like dividing from my giant mug, so I'm gonna actually use a separate one.
So behind me is my my teacup collection. Normally, in non-pandemic times, I have students over all the time for tea parties, and that's why I have so many. I haven't mentioned I'm actually in a UCLA dorm right now. I do what I want, says the pug.
Yes. People are continually gifting us pug mugs, just so you know.
I'm gonna do one in a teacup just to be all like Insta-worthy.
I love it.
And
I don't have any cute teacups. Isn't that weird? I just have giant coffee mugs. I think that says a lot about who I am. Okay, I'm dividing between 2 mugs, and then the next step is to microwave. So we are getting close to mug cake.
It's kind of hard to divide with the marshmallows. You like want equal marshmallow apportionage.
I was just having the same thought, because I do feel like they're like a little bit clumpy in one of mine. I feel like we should have, if I did this again, I would add the marshmallows at the end.
Yep.
So for those of you who are going to make this mug cake later, divide first, marshmallow second. Try and make it even. Also not something I'm great at. So my next question for you as you're dividing is, so we've talked quite a bit about writing, but what general advice do you have for incoming students about academic success at UCLA and adjusting to the quarter system?
Yeah, quarter system is hard because it's so fast. And particularly for writing, because writing, you need time away from whatever it is you're doing. It's not really something that you should binge do, although everyone does, myself included. You need time away from writing. Like, I don't recommend that you stay up for like 8 hours, you know, drinking pots of coffee, trying to like cram write. It's actually better to just go to bed at a certain point and look at it again in the morning when you've had some sleep. So knowing that you've got 10 weeks to work with, when you get those deadlines for papers, you know, plan ahead of time, make an appointment at the Writing Center before you even need it. I think they make them a week in advance, got to double check on that. But it can be a good accountability piece for you. Like if you've made an appointment to go talk to someone, it will force you to actually come up with some sort of writing or questions before you meet with them, because you know that somebody's expecting something. So make time for doing drafts, make time for completing the reading for the assignment, you know, go to office hours. These sorts of things will help. When you get an essay back, if you have the opportunity to revise it, sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. But regardless, take a look at what you did well as the places that could be improved, and kind of keep that in mind. I think people can get sort of in a negative spiral about writing where they only focus on what they did wrong. And it's important to like cheer for yourself for the things that went well, you know, to kind of keep your spirits up. Because writing can be a very lonely process. And we're already in lonely times. So I'm also a big fan of writing groups. You could do it online, or making accountability buddies with someone else in the class. We're like, okay, I'm going to do a working thesis by, you know, midnight tonight. Let's swap them or something. Anything that kind of keeps you going so that you don't get kind of stuck in your own head. Are we ready to do microwaving one of these?
We're ready for microwaving, and someone dropped me a great question. Thank you for showing that, because mine looks awful. Your teacup is beyond cute. Mine looks the same. I'm ready. Mine's in the microwave. I just have to hit the buttons. My microwave's in a very strange location. It's like below this table. It's weird. You know, LA, like apartments, sometimes they don't come with a microwave or a refrigerator or a stove. So we got a question. So we're microwaving, by the way, for 2.5 minutes.
I'm going to repeat your question while I'm putting mine in. You won't see me here.
I'm ready.
All right.
So the question we got was, do you have any tips for planning out a term paper or a thesis?
I'm a big person for in movement. So like if you have something that you're kind of thinking about or mulling over, get out of your house and go for a walk. Unless, of course, like today, the weather is full of ash. So if you can't go outside, then walk around your apartment or room. But I think it really helps to get some blood moving and just kind of like clear your mind when you're working on a difficult, like sort of mental problem like this. Also talking it out with someone who doesn't know what you're talking about. So someone who's not in your class. So it could be a parent, could be a friend, it could be a roommate, like trying to explain to them the way you're thinking about this essay or assignment or sort of question that you're answering can help clarify for you the points where someone else would get confused in terms of what your ideas are, or their questions might help you realize what it is you actually want to say. I'm also a big visual person, hence my ridiculous whiteboard. So many of you probably have already learned in like first year writing things like doing clustering, where you write lots of ideas and you kind of tie them together, that sort of thing. When I was studying for the GRE ages ago, I would put ideas on 3x5 cards, which I then put into Ziploc bags, which I then, not even kidding, attached inside of the shower with dental floss. Not saying this, but so that even when I was like just in the shower, I could look at them and feel like, oh yeah, this is like what I'm thinking about. Just things to get you out of the space of sitting in front of a laptop with a blank screen freaking out. And also knowing the thesis, you don't need to have the full thesis. Ooh.
I've got one.
Mine's coming. You don't need to have the perfect thesis to start writing. You usually don't know actually what you're writing about until you've gotten to the end of it. I can't tell you how often I see essays from students where their thesis is actually in the conclusion. They figured it out by the end of the essay. So let yourself write out of order. You don't have to start with the intro. You could just do your analysis of the evidence, or if it's a textual passage, look at the quotes in the text that you're looking at. And then go back to the intro later if the intro is the thing that's freezing you up. Don't feel like you have to do an outline. Some people were taught in high school or at their previous institution that you have to do the outline with the Roman numerals and the bullet points and all this stuff. If that works for you, cool. But if you don't do it, you don't need to. Some people just don't operate that way.
Yeah. Go check your mug. Mine is like very sticky. It smells really good. And because of the marshmallows, it has like funny like little dips in it. Can you all see it? Where like the marshmallow melted. It's like it smells really good.
So I think I may go with a shorter cooking time for the second one. Mine also has the crater of the moon thing happening here.
Yes, exactly.
You know what? You could put more marshmallows on top of it.
That's a great idea. I'm totally going to do that as a marshmallow fan. It's happening. Especially while it's warm, so maybe they get a little gooey.
Oh, yeah.
My second one is in right now. My next question is, and if you want a sec to think it over, what advice do you have generally as a faculty member for students to be successful? Like, what are qualities you see in successful students? Like, what are they doing that people should keep in mind?
They talk, they ask questions. I learn about them. Yeah, for actually in a face-to-face world, it would be the students who come to class early and just kind of like talk to you about what their day has been like, or hang out afterwards to ask questions. Or sometimes students come to office hours and I actually have no idea why they're there. They're just kind of like, they just sort of show up and like, we just start talking and get off on tangents. In an online world, it's a little bit more challenging because of how awkward this interface is. But professors notice when you're trying. So even if it feels awkward to you, it still makes an impression. So if you're the person who asks some questions in the chat, or you send an email with a follow-up question, or you're the brave person who answers when there's a question, these are all things that help distinguish you, help us remember who you are. And don't feel like you have to pretend that you're not lost. I think like just being really honest. I like it when students tell me what other demands they have on their time. So if they've got a part-time job, if they are an athlete, if they're doing a club sport, if they're a commuter student and they've got a long drive, like just sort of these kind of things help give you a picture of who that student is and what they're excited about. So that if I have a way, I don't know, if someone brings up, I don't know, the Marvel movies or something, I'm gonna remember that part of that detail about that student. And then after, gosh, Black Panther, I will remember in class to be like, hey, how are you doing? Gosh, that was really sad. Like, it doesn't always have to be strictly academics. The professors are real people, you are real people. We want to get to know each other in addition to all of this other stuff.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I also,
I'm listening.
Grab your second one. Mine looks lovely, by the way. It actually looks really cute in this mug because it's a yellow mug and then a yellow orangey cake. My laptop's in such a weird place for you to be able to see me in the kitchen that it's really hard.
I'm actually going to try mine because I don't know about you, but
I'm afraid I'm going to burn my mouth.
For eating the things they make.
I love trying things. I'm going to give one of these away.
This is what it looks like with a pile of marshmallows. There's nothing
I like
healthy.
it. I'm excited to try this. It's very fluffy, by the way. So my last main like pre-prepared question, then we'll go, check this out, y'all. Look at the height on this cake. I'm so impressed. This is a good recipe.
Can we use the term crumb, or is that only for sourdough?
I think you could have a crumb of a cake. Are there any Great British Baking fans in the house? Anybody? Okay, I'm such a fan. So my last big question, I hear this question all the time from students, and I would love your insight on this. How do you recommend students approach faculty for letters of recommendation? Because to me, the previous question about like, where you're talking about going to office hours and all that kind of stuff goes hand in hand with this one. So what do you think? Oh, and also, like, my cake's really good. How's yours?
Mine is a little bit overcooked, not gonna lie, but I will learn from the first version of this, and in the cake revision, it will be better.
I did take mine out earlier, by the way. I listened to you on that. I think you're right. I would do closer to like 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes on this. If you're making it at home.
This
Yeah.
is definitely better. It doesn't have the brown crater this time. You can't actually see that. You'll just have to go with me.
Flavor's good though.
Letters of rec. Yeah, you want to think early on about who to ask. In most cases, you will need more than one letter, and you want people who can speak to different parts of your academic and professional life. So who you ask will kind of depend on what you're applying for. Yeah, so there's that. Keep that in mind. You want people who actually know you. So in most cases, smaller classes will be your best bet. So even if you have, like, I don't know, the most famous Nobel Prize winning professor who's in your, who's teaching your class of 300, even though that name would be very, very impressive, it's not likely that that professor knows you that well, unless you've been taking your advice and like showing up to office hours and all these other things. It's far more likely that the professor in the 20-person class knows you better. I'm going to jump for a moment. One of the questions you sent me earlier, someone asked, why is there a cap of 15 students on this class if we're online?
Yes.
This is why. Because the small classes are small for a purpose, so we really get to know each student. And especially for high grading load courses, writing classes are one of them. If you go too much beyond that, the grading load gets very, very large for the professor, and they can't give you the same quality instruction. So small classes are kept small for a reason, even when it's online. That was a quick tangent. But yes, how to ask for a letter of rec. Sometimes letting them know early on, even if you don't know yet what your deadline is. Just like as you're in office hours and you're like, hey, I think I might want to apply to graduate school next year, but I'm not really sure, would it be okay to ask for a letter of rec? And then they'll say, fine, let me know when you get closer. If you have the actual deadline, it varies, like how much time you give a professor varies, but most of us want at least 2 weeks to a month.
Mm-hmm.
If you know us well, we can do a quick turnaround if you need like an emergency letter of rec, but most of us need at least 2 weeks. Things that can make it easier for us when you approach us is remind us what class you were in, because we teach multiple classes, many students. If there was anything that would help jog their memory, like I did that project on desalinization plants, or I was the one who did XYZ, or I wrote that really large paper about biology. You could even attach it later. And then ask them what you can do to help make their process easier. So if they want to see a writing sample, if they want to see a resume, those sorts of materials. You don't need to be bashful about asking. Professors can easily say no if they don't have the time or whatever. Most cases though, we'll be happy to do it. But don't approach a professor as if they have to do it. Like, you don't want to say, I need this letter by July or I won't get into Harvard kind of thing. So an initial way, like a short email or short office hour Zoom visit, just approach them and say, I'm applying for this. Would you consider writing a letter for me? Yeah. Once they say yes, then you're like, oh, great. What can I do? What can I offer you? I could give you this or this or this or this. And then you can get them materials. So yeah. I read
That's
a lot.
Awesome advice. I'm always surprised. I write more letters for like people who are like as like a personal or like a professional like leadership reference. And I always really also enjoy it when people are very clear about what they're applying to, because people will often ask me for like a letter, and I would change it if I knew it's for grad school or for like a job or for like Teach for America or something. So as clear as you can be about what specifically, and then I often ask people, but when they tell me explicitly, it's just easier. Like, is there anything that you really want to make sure I speak to? So for a faculty member, can you talk about my writing? For a science faculty member, can you talk about the research I did in your lab? Something like that. If it's like a personal or like a leadership work reference, can you talk about my leadership or my teamwork skills? And I'll tell people like, oh yeah, I can do that easily, or maybe I need more information about something, or like, I don't know that much about that, but I can do this. I see a question, so I'm moving to questions from y'all. So by the way, I highly recommend the marshmallows on top. Mine melted really nicely. It was a lovely treat. And so one of the questions was, can you tell us a little bit about midterms, what they're looking like with us being online, and how people can best prepare for midterms in like a virtual environment?
So one thing that's challenging is I'm in a field that doesn't do midterms. So in writing courses, traditionally you're writing assignments through the whole quarter, maybe working yourself up to the large research paper, say at the end. There might be a piece of writing that's due around a midterm, but traditionally we don't administer midterms. Mm-hmm. So what I might do actually is talk to some of my faculty friends in other departments, get back to you, and then you could post this. Because I think the way that faculty members are approaching the changes to being online vary really differently depending on the discipline. I will say that this is a new world. So sometimes there are kinks in the process. And again, if you find yourself taking a midterm that is, let's say, a synchronous midterm where you all have to be in the class at the same time and you're in a different time zone, if there's anything, or your internet drops or something happens, reach out to the professor and tell them. See if you can work through the issues that way.
I love that. I also know we have some folks who went online in spring in this session as like moderators and co-hosts. If you have any advice, drop it in the chat of like what it was like in other classes, because you all span a bunch of different disciplines. Are there other questions in the house? You could either, I see a follow-up question, by the way, about the letter of rec. If you're planning on applying to graduate school later, like a year or two after finishing undergrad, what do you recommend? How do you set that up to not be like a ghost reappearing?
So there's a couple options. One is there's a dossier service, dossier, D-O-S-S-I-E-R, called Interfolio, which holds letters of rec for you. So one option would be get your letter of rec before you graduate. It's stored on Interfolio, and then you have it sort of infinitely. Now, there is the caveat that letters of rec are best when they are current. So I think having a letter in Interfolio may like help you sleep at night. You've got that in the bank. But the better option would be to stay in contact with the professors you're going to be writing letters of rec for, or they'll write letters, you know what I mean? So before graduation, send them an email or again, office hours and say, hey, I'm graduating. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed your class. I wanted to let you know I'm going to take a gap year, or I'm going to, work and try to pay off my loans. And I'm thinking maybe I'll apply for med school in 2 years. Would it be okay to ask you then for a letter of rec? And then every once in a while, just send them another email and say, hey, remember me? This is what I ended up doing with my time. And I just wanted to thank you. Or I'm not actually sure I really want to go to med school anymore. Do you have other suggestions for graduate school? Just kind of touch base with them. Most of us really like hearing from students when they go off into the world and find out, where they went. So you could keep contact that way, or have that letter in Interfolio. But it's not unusual for me to receive emails from students who have graduated a year or two out. And then again, when you first contact them, it is very helpful when you say, I took your class in fall of 2020 or whatever it was, especially when it's years ago. So they can go into their files, pull up a roster and be like, oh yeah, Sarah, I remember her.
It's true. And there's, even if you love someone, you might be like mixing their name up, or it's just so helpful. Something, I have a tangential, I feel like you also love this. I love when people follow up and tell me if they got it or not. It's actually pretty rare that people do that. And then I'm like, I will write a letter for you anytime, because I'm just like invested.
It's also okay to follow up and say, it didn't happen this time, but I think I'm going to try again.
Yes.
So again,
I really appreciate getting both of those. And I actually get excited, like you said, to get updates and things like that. I know faculty feel similarly. We got a question. Is it possible for non-English majors to take the Writing for Transfers class?
ooh, I don't believe so. I need to double check on it. I think it's specific to the English majors.
Thank you. Are there writing assignments common within life science majors?
I know a lot of them do lab reports, and I know a lot of them who end up working in labs with professors end up becoming co-authors for Citations, which is super exciting. One of the things about going to a large research university like this is that you can get a publication credit as an undergraduate, which is amazing. But I can't speak to specific courses beyond that because it's outside of my everyday existence. But there are, so I'm a faculty in residence. I don't know if we talked about that. There's about 20 of us, so faculty members who live in the dorms. And you could go on the website, look at all the faculty in residences, look at their fields, and if there's one who's in a class or area that you're interested in, you could just cold email them. You could tell them I sent you, then you don't feel weird about it. And ask your question. They're very, very approachable and willing to answer lots of questions, especially now because everything's online. So yes.
I appreciate that. I agree with you on lab reports, and then also just because, you know, I remember I used to be environmental science and ecology, and so lots of lab reports, get really comfortable with those structures. And then the other piece is, oh, I'm totally blanking on what it's called. It'll hit me in a second, I'll say it. Are there programs or applications you would recommend to do grammar checks?
No. I really feel like talking to someone at the Writing Center and looking at patterns of errors is the way to go. And definitely don't say, check my grammar. Particularly for, like, say, multilingual speakers or international students in particular who can be very worried about grammar. You know, making an appointment and saying I'm an international speaker, a multilingual speaker of English, I'm a little bit uncertain if I'm using the right verb tenses, or I have a real hard time with prepositions, or is the meaning clear, is the way I would approach it rather than check your grammar.
I support that. Okay, I've got one more question, then I'm going to do a final fun question, and then we'll wrap it up. But if there's other questions, drop them in the chat and we can answer them in writing on like social media. We can get you as many. We'll work with current students and Professor Prescott, and we will get that all sorted for you. So I'm reading this out loud. Midterms and finals in the spring were more flexible. Oh, I'm reading your answer. I love it. Okay, great. The question was, are there other classes like English majors that are geared towards transfer students? Josue is right. University Studies 10D is for transfer students to help you like adjust to UCLA, understand research, understand like where to find resources, etc. That's a great question. They actually filled all their sections and they opened up one more. And so if you're interested, definitely sign up sooner rather than later. Okay. I want to know, as someone who loves to read and write, what are you reading right now? This is my last question.
Well, actually, I should also show the bookshelf before everyone goes too.
You should. Yeah, I agree.
I'm on the last book of Stephen King's Dark Tower series. Basically, when the campus was shutting down in March, and the day the library was closing, I went to the library and I was like, I need to take out as many books as possible to keep me going. And I was like, this is like a huge, each novel is like this big, like 7-volume epic series. Game of Thrones would have been good, but I already read it. So I took out all of the the Dark Tower books, and that's what I'm finishing. I'm probably going to read Dune next in anticipation of the adaptation coming out. And then I'm not sure what I'm going to read next. But yeah, I was going to show. Normally when students come over to my house, this is one of the first things I show them. So I should show y'all. Well, first, I color code my books. So colored books. And then there's this one. And what I typically like to do is like, maybe I'll give you Sense and Sensibility.
That was like a magic trick. I loved it. You really have the best bookshelves. Can I show you? I copied your bookshelf. I don't think I showed you.
Yeah.
I don't know how well you're gonna be able to see it, but it also has like weird tchotchkes on it. But I have a color-coded bookshelf now too.
I'm impressed. Side note, I've been playing Disney's Villainous board game over Zoom. Oh, where can I get that bookshelf? It's called a vertical bookshelf. I actually found mine, I actually think I got it at a Goodwill, but I think there's multiple ones like it. Yeah, and bookshelf queen, yes.
You really are. She also has book art.
But again, I want to reiterate, anyone can send me an email with questions, especially if you have a question that you think you're embarrassed to ask, like your actual professor. You can always ask people like us, because we live here, that's why we're here. We remember being students. I definitely have like counseled students on how to approach professors on campus, specific ones, or when there's challenges and they're kind of embarrassed to ask the professor who's grading them. It can be helpful to talk to a professor who you don't have that kind of hierarchical relationship with. So you're not bothering me. Definitely feel free to email me at any point during this process. I'm super excited about the transfer students coming here. You already found this great resource by being here today. So yeah.
Well, I just want to say thank you so much for spending time with us today. This was really a joy, not only to make mug cakes, but all of your advice was fantastic. If you have any shout outs or thank yous, drop them in the chat, or if you want to unmic yourself, you can wave, say hi, etc. But I just want to say thank you again so much. We really appreciate you all coming out. Our next session is at 2 o'clock, and it's Ask Me Anything with an Academic Advisor. We actually have 2 academic advisors, spoiler alert. But thank you so much. Like really, I feel like I learned more about writing, even just being here. So really appreciate it. And y'all should make that mug cake for real. So we will let you all go, and thank you again. And hopefully we'll see you back at 2.